Good morning and happy Sunday. Another edition of In the Know. Joining us, Rochelle City Manager Jeff Fiegenschuh. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for inviting me at the last minute. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you in here. Lots of stuff happening in Rochelle. It always seems to me that there are always big public works projects going on, big expansions, things getting fixed, a big downtown project. I know one of the neighborhoods is getting power lines moved. There is always something happening, putting the tax dollars to work for the people of Rochelle. So since you're here today, let's talk a little bit about property taxes, because at the meeting this week on a Tuesday instead of Monday,
right,
because of Veterans Day, there was a big discussion that you guys have been working on regarding the city's equalized assessed valuation, or EAV. And since I have you in here,
sure,
what on earth is the EAV in regards to the city of Rochelle?
So every year the county sends us their estimated EAV, and the EAV is what you said, the equalized assessed value. And so if your house has a market value of $100,000, then essentially the EAV is 33% of that, or $33,000. And then you take off a homestead exemption or a veterans exemption or a senior exemption. And when those are all taken off, that's the value that your house is actually taxed at, okay, for property taxes. So our EAV went from approximately $311 million to approximately $322 million.
And what is that number? I mean, obviously, my house is not $322 million.
That's all. Okay, so I'm sorry. That would be all residential, commercial, industrial property within the city of Rochelle. Now,
so we're talking vacant lot to rooftops to parking lots, everything.
Anything that is privately owned or generates some kind of revenue. So yes, if you have a vacant lot and there's not a house on it, your taxes won't be very high, but yeah, you pay a property tax on that vacant lot. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that is the big number then, that 300
and
that's all
inclusive
million
in that number.
Okay.
And again, we don't set we don't set the evaluations. That's done, I believe, at the township level. And so they reassess property every year, and then the county makes an estimate. So it's estimated at $322 million, and then we in all taxing districts, but I can only speak for the city. The city then looks at what we need to fund our pensions and our general fund, and then we set a requested dollar amount. So the requested dollar amount this year is $3,011,000. So that's what we're requesting in property taxes to fund all of our pensions and what we need for the general fund. And then that's how you divide numbers, and that's how you come up with the actual levy rate, which is about 93 cents.
Okay.
Per 100 of evaluation.
So is this all the revenue the city brings in, or are there other revenue streams that come in that are also combined with property taxes to pay all the bills?
There are other revenue streams like sales tax, and we receive a share of the local government distributive fund, LGDF funds that come from the state. So there are multiple revenue sources that the city receives. Property taxes are one component of that.
And so when residents say I have the $100,000 home in Rochelle,
right,
and I will receive my property tax bill this spring, divided into two parts and all that stuff. That property tax bill, not all of it is going to Rochelle. There's a whole list there of percentages broke down to where things go.
Right. About 13% of your tax bill goes to the city of Rochelle, and then the rest goes to the other taxing districts. So we're a smaller component of your tax bill. So I can tell you that this, based on the EAV evaluation or values that the county has given us, and the numbers that we've calculated, your city portion of the tax bill should go down next year. Not much, a few dollars, but it will go down. I can only speak for the city portion of your tax bill.
Yeah.
I can't speak for any other taxing district. I can tell you, though, that based on the numbers we've received, your city portion of your tax bill will go down a little bit.
There are built-in safeguards to prevent taxing bodies from running amok and just saying they want 50% of everything. Mm-hmm. You guys have to have hearings if you go above a threshold, right?
Right. If we request over 4.99% increase in dollar amount, we have to have a truth in taxation hearing. In my 7.5 years here, we've never had one. In fact, if you look at the city's overall levy, mayor and council and myself have made it a priority to hold the line on property taxes. I'll admit I'm not a fan of property taxes because you're taxing people's homes and their businesses, and it is a stable source of revenue for government. There's no doubt about it. But if you lose your ability to pay, Unlike sales tax, where you can just reduce your expenditures, with the property tax, you have to pay it no matter what. So I really want us to hold the line on property taxes. So we haven't had a truth in taxation hearing since I've been here. In fact, our tax rate has gone down significantly. It was, I don't remember offhand, it was maybe $1.10 at one point. Now it's down to 93 cents. My goal is to get it to 90 cents and we can try to go down lower, but my goal is to be at 90 cents and not go above that.
And explain to me what you mean by that 90-cent number.
So that 90 cents is a 90 cents per 100 of evaluation, and this is a longer conversation than we can have in 15 minutes, but it's that rate is based on our dollar amount request divided by the overall EAV, and then you get a levy rate, and that's the rate. So if anybody ever has any questions, this is really complex stuff. They can call me at City Hall. I'm happy to sit down with anybody, go through their tax bill with them at any time and answer any questions. But the levy rate is basically our dollar amount requested this year, which is just over $3 million, divided by the EAV, which is $322 million, and that's how you get your rate.
Let's talk about how the EAV has increased over the last 20-some years in Rochelle, because that's the other thing that sometimes you might not be able to wrap your brain around, like, oh my goodness, the value of everything in the entire community is $322 million, but what was it 20 years ago? Yeah,
well, that's the EAV. That's not the market value. The EAV is a third.
The 1/3 of the value of that complicated formula.
So, but the EAV isn't just reassessments of your property and your property values going up. That's a component, but there's also growth, right? So, there's people who like to complain, well, you guys get too many gas stations. Well, Love's and Pilot and Road Ranger and Benny's Corner Market and every convenience station in Rochelle pays property tax. So we want more EAV. We want to grow our economy and grow our EAV, because the more EAV that we have, the more EAV there is to tax from. And again, I can only speak for the city. The more EAV we have, then the lower we're going to make it a commitment to lower our rate. So our taxpayers, at least to the city, pay less. So we want more EAV. Zeckelman, Wheatland Tubing, getting businesses like that increases your EAV. We also have what's called the enterprise zone program. So if you start a new business in certain parts of the community, or you build a building, depending on how many jobs and how much investment you have, you can get a property tax abatement on that growth, right? It's 6 years generally. Well, so some of the EAV increases accounts for some of those properties coming out of the enterprise zone too. So it's not just my house value's gone up, I'm really upset about that. There's other components that come into play when you're talking about increasing your EAV. But again, one of the reasons why Jason Anderson and Tom Demmer, why we have these really good guys running our economic development department, is to grow our economy, grow our EAV. And that benefits everybody. It benefits the schools. It benefits the park district. It benefits the library district, the community college. Our job is to grow our economy, and hopefully that means our taxes remain stable or go down.
And it also keeps the fire department, the police department, city crews, keeps all of the functions of government rolling, so that Rochelle is a working community, that everything still does what it's supposed to.
Absolutely. And again, we're blessed because we have sales tax and other forms of revenue that we can utilize to pay our police. I mean, if you look at the city budget, almost 75% of what we spend our money on in the general fund, of the $15.2 million that we have in the general fund budgeted, goes to police, fire, and public works. And I always say I don't say that as a criticism. I say that's what normal, when you think of government, that's what you think of. You want police officers and firefighters. We're hiring more firefighters. We were talking before, right when I came in, about hiring police officers, and we're looking at hiring additional public works people because people expect these services, and so you have to fund them. But you do that through sales tax and other tax forms, but also through the property tax. And mayor and council have been very good. We use all of our gaming revenues to help fund our pensions, so we're not as reliant on property taxes. Because again, as costs are going up, we want to keep our costs in line, and not go to the taxpayer every time and say, hey, we need more money and we need more money. We are going to have some discussions. The state did end the grocery tax. That starts next year. That'll be about a $350,000 hole in our budget, and we're going to look at ways to soften that blow, or to make up those revenues. But I really do believe, especially when it comes to property taxes, we at the city level, I'm only speaking at the city level, we need to work hard to hold the line on those taxes because, again, it's not based on your ability to pay. It's based on the value of your house. And if your house value goes up and you have to pay more taxes, you don't have a choice but to pay it.
And that certainly is a big factor with an aging population.
Correct.
Because you paid for your house in your 40s, and now you're in your 60s, early 70s, stepping away from work and getting to a fixed income, and then you're in some real trouble.
Yeah, and we never want to have a situation where people can not afford to live in their houses because of their tax bill. I mean, you look at some of these suburban communities where when somebody pays off their house finally, they're still paying a mortgage payment every month just to pay their property tax bill. And again, I'm not being critical of any other government entity. I'm just simply saying in Rochelle, we really try to hold the line at the city level on the taxes.
On Tuesday, you guys also approved several ordinances to abate property taxes levied for 2024 in order to cover debt service on various general obligation bonds. That is a lot of words, and I don't know necessarily what it all means. What are general obligation bonds, and why does the city have them?
So here's a good example. We've had a lot of growth in our electric utility, and there's multiple ways you can fund infrastructure improvements, right? You can try to save up. I'm not saying that's a bad option, but as you've seen over the last 10 years, there's no way that if you save up $1 million a year, that in 10 years, that $10 million is worth the same in 10 years, right? Costs have gone up quicker. So when interest rates were low, mayor and council went out and issued almost $19 million in alternate revenue bonds, which is basically a general obligation of the city, but we pledged electric revenues to fund that debt service. And the reason we did that is because you get a better interest rate when you have a property tax to back up ultimately, right? So if the electric utility went bankrupt, which it won't, but if it were to, you would have a property tax as backup to make that debt service payment. And generally speaking, you get a lower interest rate because, as we talked earlier, everybody's got to pay their property tax bill. So we have multiple debt service bonds or debt service issuances that we've pledged other revenue sources, whether it's electric revenue, whether it's TIF revenue, whether it's non-home rule sales tax. And so every year we abate the tax levy so the county doesn't go in and just place a levy on the taxpayers to make that debt service payment, because we've pledged and have other dollars set aside. So it's really a housekeeping item that we do every year, but we have to do it because we want to ensure that the county doesn't levy a property tax to make those bond payments for us. And so every year we abate those taxes. And at some point when those bonds are paid off, you just won't see that on the agenda anymore because we've used electric revenues or whatever other revenue source that we've pledged to pay that debt service off.
Talking about revenues, I know you guys are really proud of how you support people in the community with low-income needs in regards to keeping themselves warm. I mean, let's be blunt about it. Winter is coming. If you are a resident of Rochelle and you are concerned that you are going to be cold, that you're behind in your utility bills, you guys want to work with those residents.
Absolutely. So again, I can only speak for RMU and the electric and not NICOR, but I do know NICOR has a lot of programs available too. But last night we approved an agenda item to sell energy recs to a third-party entity, and they basically pay us for the solar and produced, and they pay us for the methane gas that's burned to generate power at the landfill. We use those dollars to fund our low-income assistance program, where if you're having problems paying your electric bill, you can get up to a $500 one-time credit to help fund that or to pay that bill. I think that's very important. We also are looking at using some of those funds to start a new program to help folks make energy efficiency upgrades at their houses too. But one of the great things about having a local utility is that it's run by local people. If you have concerns, you can call the city manager, you can call the electric superintendent, you can call the mayor, city council. You're not calling somebody in Chicago. You're calling somebody here locally, and you can get your questions answered, maybe not that day, but much quicker. But we're here invested in the community. We care about our residents and our ratepayers, and we want to make sure that the utility takes care of them as best that we can and helps them when we can. The other thing I would say is, you hear people saying, your RMU is so expensive and it's so much more than ComEd. Well, you got to look. If you live in the city limits, your RMU bill covers water, wastewater, garbage, and electric. It's not just electric. We've had one rate increase since I've been here, and we raised the minimum charge $1 a month. Otherwise, we've had 2 rate decreases on our commercial customers. So RMU rates are consistently the same or lower than ComEd's, and you get 24-hour service. You get a utility billing office here in town with an amazing staff that can answer any question you have. And if they can't answer it, they'll find an answer for you. You got a mayor and city council that you can call and complain to or say, hey, great job, or any concerns that you have. So one of my favorite parts of this job that I have is RMU, and we're very blessed to have this utility, and it's great. But one of the reasons I love it is because we can create programs like the Low Income Assistance Program, which really does help people. City Manager Jeff Fiegenschuh joining us this morning. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Also, call me if you have any questions on the tax levy or any of this stuff we've talked about. Reach me at City Hall, and I'll do anything I can to answer your question. Or if you have trouble falling asleep as well. True. Yeah. Thank you.